Hi there, this is Joe from Signagelive, and in this video I'm going to talk to you all about Signagelive's automatic playlist generator. At a high level, the automatic playlist generator allows you to generate playlists programmatically based on a predefined set of rules. These rules are what we call automatic playlist plans. And the concept is as follows. You define a duration for your playlist, you define the duration for each campaign within that playlist, and within each of those campaigns you define a group of assets that your playlist plan will choose from when it generates the playlist. Once the playlist has been generated, the content from each campaign will be evenly distributed across your playlist based on the choices that you've made within the playlist plan. This is a perfect feature set for Signagelive networks that have a lot of advertising heavy content, as the playlist generator allows you to allocate a select amount of time to each of those campaigns, and the campaigns themselves represent a booking made by an advertiser. So that would be a space within your playlist that they have purchased, and that's where they want their content to play. Now, it wouldn't be a solid half hour of your advertiser's content. The way this would work is that they've purchased, let's use half hour as an example. They've purchased half hour of advertising. So across your playlist, there is half hour that they are allocated to appear in that playlist. And that's what the automatic playlist generator will do automatically for you. You will allocate the 30 minutes to the campaign. In this case, that's advertiser 1. We give them that space, and then the playlist generator will distribute all of their assets across the playlist amongst other campaigns that we have in that playlist as well. And it will distribute them evenly across the playlist, ensuring that they get their half hour slot or their half hour's worth of content displayed across the duration of that playlist. We'll build one of these out in a second just so you can see this for yourself. But essentially, you would need to define 3 things before you begin doing this. You need to define the length of your content loop, which is of course going to be the actual length of the playlist itself, the total time that each campaign is going to get, and then we're going to define what media assets are going to live within each of those campaigns so that the playlist generator knows that it needs to distribute the assets from that campaign based on the time set in the campaign. This will make more sense in a second. Let's jump over to Signagelive. So here we are in my Signagelive network, and if you have this enabled on your network, you will find this under Content and Auto Playlist Plans. This is a paid for module, so this will not be on your Signagelive network by default. So let's go into Auto Playlist Plans. So here we are, I've got one that I made yesterday, but we're going to make a brand new one today. So let's do that. I'm going to click the blue plus up here and click Automatic Playlist Plan. This is the top level plan. So essentially what we're defining here is the duration of the entire playlist that we're going to generate. So in this case, let's keep it at 60 minutes for ease. Here I'm going to call it Signagelive Test Playlist Plan. So slot length, that is going to be the length of the individual assets as they appear in the playlist. So across that 60-minute loop, which is the entire duration of the playlist, there is going to be 15-second slots if I leave it at 15 seconds. In this case, I'm going to set this at 30 just for ease, because then we know there's at least 2 assets every 1 minute. That will make it quite easy to follow here. You, of course, get the option to log proof of play impressions, which you may want in this case. You can tick that on, and that will then enable proof of play on these assets. In this case, I'm going to leave it unticked in this instance, and immediately we have priority groups and filler media assets. Another good thing about the playlist generator here is that say you haven't sold up all of your advertising space. Let's say you have a 60-minute playlist and you've only sold 30 minutes worth of content. You then get the ability to allocate filler media assets to this entire playlist plan, which will mean that if there's any spare space left that isn't allocated to a campaign, it will fill that space with any filler assets. So the priority groups up here, they essentially encompass where your campaigns are going to sit. You can have multiple priority groups, but today we're going to stick with just one. So we're going to create a new priority group. And of course, within here, I have to give this a name. I'm going to call it priority 1. And I'm going to make sure I spell priority correctly. And now here I get the choice to select the scheduling mode. So let's go through these. Largest first means that the assets will be scheduled into the playlist, starting with the assets with the highest number of instances first. So if I select largest first here, what that's going to do is prioritize any campaigns that have the most space to fill. So for example, let's say I had multiple campaigns within this priority group. I have one that's got 30 minutes worth of content. I've got another one with 10 minutes worth of content. This will mean that the priority group will use campaign 1. It will focus on evenly distributing the content from that first campaign, and it will then move on to campaign 2 and then follow suit. Moving on to round robin now, if we select round robin, that foregoes the largest first logic, and therefore the assets will be scheduled in the playlist in the order that the campaigns are stored within the priority group. slots in the playlist will be populated in order. Now, moving on to the filler scheduling mode, you can of course read the definition down the bottom there, but essentially let's use our 60 minutes as an example here. If we had our 60 minutes of playlist time, we haven't sold all of our ad space, but we've used all of the content elsewhere in the campaign. It's now going to fill that blank space. Let's say we had 20 minutes left in the playlist. It will use our filler content to fill that space, just to ensure that something is always displaying on screen. In this case, I'm going to leave it at largest first for now. Finally, I'm just going to hover over the allow overbooking option for this priority group. Allowing overbooking may result in campaigns that make up this priority group playing for longer than the configured booked duration for each campaign. Overbooking is applied to fill any remaining gaps in the playlist plan loop duration after all of the priority groups have been allocated. So again, you have that choice to allow overbooking if you wish, but today we're going to leave ours on largest first, and we're not going to allow overbooking. So now you'll see we've got priority group 1, and now we get the option to create our campaigns. Again, our campaigns, let's consider them our advertisers, our clients, anyone who has purchased space in this playlist. So typically, you would have a campaign per individual or per company or per client. Today, we're going to create 2, and what will happen is when the playlist is generated, they will be distributed across the playlist evenly amongst all of the campaigns. Okay, so let's create a new campaign. So I'm going to click Create New Campaign. I'm going to call this Advertiser 1. Insert mode, this is the actual mode that the content is going to be inserted into the playlist. In my case, I want it to play the next asset, so it's going to do it in a linear order. You can of course set that to random if you wish. Campaign duration, that is the duration that this actual campaign has purchased. So in this case, let's pretend this advertiser has purchased 30 minutes of our 60-minute playlist. So 30 minutes of the entire playlist is going to be filled with content from this campaign. Asset duration, we did actually define that at the plan level. You can of course get more granular and define it within the actual priority group itself. In this case, I'm going to leave it at the default 30 seconds, which we set it earlier. So that means each asset is going to get 30 seconds. Separation category. Now, separation categories allow you to ensure that you don't have similar pieces of content running side by side. So let's pretend that we are a shopping center and we are selling ad space on our screens. And we have 2 burger restaurants in the same shopping center, and they both have ads that are going to appear on these screens. You can allocate separation category, which means that space will be created between the content from 2 different campaigns. In this case, I'm not going to select one, and I'm going to begin adding the media assets for this first campaign. So let's go to campaign 1 here, and I've already got some assets here, just some simple slideshow stuff. So I have 3 assets here, each of them 30 seconds in duration. Press OK. Now that is our first campaign, and this is the first advertiser that is going to appear within the duration of this entire playlist. I'm then going to create a second one. So let's go again, and we'll call this Advertiser 2. Insert mode, let's do Play Next Asset again. This time, let's set the campaign duration to 10 minutes. So that means that in total, these guys get 10 minutes in our playlist. Of the 60-minute playlist, they are going to have 10 minutes as opposed to the first campaign, which had 30 minutes. Again, separation category, I'm not going to set at this time. And I'm going to begin adding the media assets for campaign 2, which is going to be these ones. And now in total, we have 30 minutes worth of campaign content, and we have 10 minutes worth of campaign content. Now, of course, in total, that does not add up to 60 minutes. Therefore, the rest of that space needs to be filled. So in our case, what we're going to do is create filler media assets, which will be populated in those blank spaces. So again, I'm going to go to add assets, and I'm going to go down to campaign 3, which is going to be this one here. And now we have 3 lots of filler content that will be placed in any blank spaces across the playlist. Again, all of this content is going to be evenly distributed across the playlist, and you'll see how this works in a second. So now we've actually set all of our rules here, we can go ahead and generate our first playlist. I'm going to do that right away by hitting Generate Playlist. And I'm going to press Yes. And what we'll see straight away is our playlist will populate based on the rules that we've set in the playlist plan. So as you can see, it goes from campaign 1 to campaign 2, to campaign 1 to campaign 3. So anytime that we see a green media asset here, that is our playlist filling that blank space with the filler media. And the rest of the campaign, as you'll see, has been evenly distributed across the playlist. And if we go into the playlist plan usage tab here, we can actually see how this playlist has been generated based on the rules that we have created. So you can see that priority 1 has 80 assets in total, which of course add up to 40 minutes, which we mentioned earlier. 60 assets of that are made up from the campaigns from advertiser 1. As you can see, we've got our 3 assets here. There's 20 instances of each of these assets, each totaling to around 10 minutes, which of course will then add up to the 30 minutes that we allocated for this particular campaign. Moving on to advertiser 2, 20 assets totaling at 10 minutes, which is of course the time that we set earlier. Those 10 minutes has resulted in 7 instances of each asset, and you can see their allocated times at the bottom here. And the filler media assets, they are of course filling that 20-minute gap that we created in the actual playlist, and you can see it's calculated all the times automatically here. I can now press OK, and that's now going to save our playlist, as you can see there. If I click back on that plan now, at any point I can go back in and see my generated playlist. So if we wanted to tweak the rules a little bit and generate a brand new playlist, we can do that as and when we want to. We can just go back into the plan and just change the properties or the content as we see fit. Going back into our generated playlist now, I of course get the ability to publish this playlist if I want to, or I can make some manual changes if I want. Let's say I wanted to replace some of these assets with some other assets from my library. I can actually hit the search bar here, find the asset, and I can use the find and replace tool. Now, of course, everything I have done here today, you could, in theory, do this within the usual playlist creator, but the power of the automatic playlist generator is that you can actually have the allocated time for your advertisers. So if you are selling that ad space and you want to ensure that a advertiser gets a solid 30 minutes of their own content into your playlist, this is a way that you can automatically do that without having to go through and manually select and work out the maths behind it. And of course, this will ensure that your advertisers are guaranteed that allocated amount of time to your playlist. If you pair this functionality up with a proof of play report, for example, you also have the ability to review how that advertiser's content performed. And of course, if I've saved this playlist as well, I can do like so. And then if I go back to my playlist editor, I can then go and edit that playlist as and when I want. So for example, if I go into content playlist, create an edit, open a playlist, and you can see I've generated a lot here, but the one that we want to look at is this one here. And there you go. There's our automatic playlist there that we have generated, and you can go and edit this how you would any other playlist. I hope you found this video helpful. I appreciate there's a lot of information here. There are many different ways you can achieve a auto-populated playlist in this instance, thanks to all of the parameters you can define within the auto playlist generator. And we have tons of more information on that on our help center as well. So feel free to have a look at the article, which will give you more information about the defined parameters. If you have any more questions, as always, we're more than happy to help. So just get in touch and we'll be able to assist you however we can. And until next time, we'll see you on the next one.